everybody? Welcome back to an episode of The Why. We're super excited to kick off our second season as we go into 2024. I've got Kevin Rasnick. Is that how you say your last name? I'm going to screw stuff up as we go through the thing here. But Kevin, I'd like for you to just kind of give a brief introduction. Like, what do you tell people like when you meet them at Kroger, I guess is the way to put it.
I usually ask them like where the alcohol is at Kroger, but
Nice.
Outside of that, I am the director of the Huron County Chamber of Commerce, and there's a lot goes into that. Not a lot of people know, what a Chamber of Commerce does. A lot of times I'll preface, hey, if you've listened to high school sports on the radio on 95.3 WLKR in the Norwalk area, chances are you've heard me. I spent 10 plus years broadcasting high school sports in the area, in the Huron County area. So schools like Norwalk, St. Paul, Monroeville, South Central, Edison, even did some Perkins, high school football, high school basketball, boys and girls. So a lot of times people say, I've heard your name before. As soon as I mention the radio thing, that's awesome. Where people heard me from.
What, so are you part of any, like, St. Paul's championship runs or anything like that? Did you get to go do announcing for those?
So, when they won the state title, I think it was 2009.
Yep.
I wasn't in radio then.
Oh, that stinks.
So I got to do some pretty big girls tournament games for basketball. Norwalk made to the state semis one year. I did call a couple Monroeville girls volleyball. Went down to Dayton for a state championship. So I did a couple of those.
Awesome.
In 2014, I was pretty new to the business. Norwalk Truckers won state championship in basketball. They're just celebrating their 10 years this year.
Yeah.
I didn't broadcast, but I got a couple of games that year to do. So
that's awesome.
It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it so much. I haven't done it now for probably almost 2 years. Miss it. But with kids at home, it's kind of nice to be home on weekends now.
No, understandable, man. What? So we kind of talked about this off camera a little bit. Tell me about the family life. What's that look like? I'm assuming. I know you got the twin boys.
Yep, twin boys. They're 5. They're in kindergarten. Podcast. The why. It starts at home for me. My boys. My wife and I, we tried to have kids for 9 plus years, whatever it was. Just didn't happen. We decided to adopt, which we're so glad we did. We're so grateful. We adopted the boys right at birth. We literally got to the hospital 5 minutes before they were born. All of a sudden, we're parents. And it's been, people say it goes by fast. You're like, oh, yeah, it does and all that. But it truly does. But it's been a blast. It's been a blur. My boys are boys, so they like to jump around, play sports, and throw stuff around, which is fun.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I mean, my wife and I, we're expecting our first little girl.
Awesome.
So we're super excited for that. And, we did have those conversations, because we're newly married. We got married in last December. We've been married for just over a year. But, we had those conversations like, if God says it's not for us, man, like, we're cool with adoption.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that's super admirable. It just shows your character, that you guys are able to, because it's different, right? When it's not your own flesh and blood.
Yeah. But there's times where you forget that they're adopted.
And you should.
Right. And it's great family support. My parents, my wife's parents, extended family, all right away. Like,
that's awesome.
Accepted them, and we told them they've, as much as a 5-year-old can understand that they're adopted. We started that conversation, months ago. So they grew up knowing that that's what, they are.
Yeah.
They don't fully get the concept, but we want them growing up knowing instead of finding out in a way we don't want them finding out.
No, man, that's something that's I think oftentimes missed is like if you don't get ahead of it, then it gets ahead of you, and that's just in life.
Yeah.
Man.
Well, yeah.
Have to be with just that.
Well,
right?
Social media things get around, and we're not hiding it. We were open about it during the process. We were open about it. So people know. It's not like it's a surprise for anyone. So, to cut off any accidental, what a friend of mine just said, I'm adopted, conversations, they grow up knowing. So, people say, and I get that a lot. It's nice to hear, it's something admirable you did, and it's great. And yes, in a sense, it is a good thing. They would have come from a situation that just, frankly, wasn't a good situation, the birth mom and all that. Nothing against her, whatsoever. Her life is her life, her story is her story. But, I mean, it's hard for me to say, we did something good when we get so much out of it ourselves.
100%, man. I've got, actually, the guy that was in my wedding, he adopted a little girl, I think just over a year ago. and they actually help the mother through the process a little bit, and I don't know how involved. And if at any point, man, I'm getting too deep down the rabbit hole,
I'm completely open about this all this stuff.
So I hold a high merit for people who are able to go through that, because I mean, it's one thing to adopt a child and you don't know the parent, but obviously with you guys had an opportunity to know mom. What was that like? I guess if you don't mind sharing.
No, it's awkward. It's gonna be, right. I mean, she had a rough life. She grew up. She started doing heroin at 15 years old with her dad. Of course, you're not gonna have a great life if that's where you're coming from.
Yeah, 100%.
So we had complete empathy and understanding. And people would say, "Oh, because she was in prison for a while. She was doing drugs while she was pregnant." And people are like, "Oh, how terrible of a person! How awful is that?" And without context, sure, right? Oh man, that's I don't know if I can swear on here, but
you say whatever you want, man.
What a piece of shit.
Yeah, no,
right?
100%.
And you're like, no, it's not that. Look, here's her story. And quite frankly, she made a decision. She knows, because she had other kids. So my kids have half siblings they don't know about, so they won't watch this anytime soon.
No, 100%.
That conversation will happen later. But she realized I can't take care of these kids. She made the decision that I'm going to give them up for adoption.
Yeah.
And we went through an agency, and actually, it was her stepdad who kind of picked us out of all these applicants and all this stuff. And, we drove down to Cincinnati. That's where she's from, that area, to meet with her at an Arby's. And it was, kind of awkward. Hi, how you doing? And it was, we want to make sure she was comfortable with us.
Yeah.
So we were asking her a lot of questions. We were hoping that she would ask us questions. Wasn't really that. We kind of left the meeting like, is everything good? Like, yeah, we called the adoption agency. Yeah, she likes you guys. We're moving forward. The kids are due in a month. Okay. Well, literally a week later, I'm at home having lunch during the week. Head back to work. My wife texts me and says, well, we got to go. And I'm like, I was like 99.9% sure we were going, but I'm like, where? Like a dumbass.
Yeah.
So we went down to Cincinnati. We drove. We got there. It was, again, 5-10 minutes later, the kids were born. Now, they were born addicted to drugs, so we had to stay in the NICU for 2 weeks down there while they were, getting better and getting healthy. The birth mom was at the hospital. We had conversations with her, making sure she was comfortable. And she still had time to change her mind even after the kids were born. So it was a couple of days.
Yeah, what does that look like? I mean, because I understand, like, I've heard of those stories, right? How long, do you know, like...
So she had, I forget how many days, it was a few days where she could change her mind. And she kept reassuring us, I'm not changing my mind. My cousin went through it. They actually brought kids home. And it wasn't the birth mom, but the birth father changed his mind and wanted the kids back. So the kids literally left his home going back to the dad. So we had that story in our head. But she was reassuring all along, everything was fine. We went to the same Arby's to sign the paperwork. It was official. She didn't know who the birth dad was, so he wasn't really in the picture. So it was, it was sketchy and touch and go in our heads, but the whole process at the end of the day went really smooth.
Yeah. I mean, I guess, and looking at it, the one thing I picked up, you said she was almost, I would call it detached. Is that the way you would probably word it? When she was talking to you? She
was up until, I think it hit her as she was signing the paperwork, because as she was leaving Arby's, we were sitting in the parking lot, and she comes out crying. Yeah. And like, oh, whatever.
But that's maybe what she was trying to do in those early moments, right?
Yeah.
Was just trying to detach from the situation and just the gravity of the situation in general. I mean, applaud her for realizing, hey, I'm not not fit, right? Like, I can't do this.
No, and that's why I'll never, and I had not to get into this, but I had a brother pass away from a drug overdose. So I'm very empathetic, very sympathetic to somebody, especially if you're doing heroin with your dad at 15 years old.
Man, that's just...
you're set up to fail.
Yeah.
So
the world's against you. I mean,
right.
And I'm not that guy. Like, right? Like, I'm not the guy. You get one time to tell me your story and give me the sob story, and then after that, like, hey man, we're going.
Yeah.
Like, we're moving on from it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But like, that is truly the deck of cards is against you.
Yeah.
And for you to have the power to make that decision that I can't support these boys the way that they need to be supported, kudos.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously.
Absolutely.
Like, I mean, all the power to her, man. Like, that is the most selfless thing that you could possibly... She'd be selfish and say, no, I'm going to...
Take these kids, take the government money.
Yeah.
Because it's all that stuff. No, I mean, she got compensated a little bit,
of
through all this whole thing, and good for her. But anytime, and I enjoy sharing the story because it's a good story, right? It's something we're happy of. And when it gets to her part of the story, I always defend her.
Yeah.
Ultimately, if she didn't make the decision, A, to adopt, be to choose us, I'm not having this conversation.
Yeah,
you know?
it's a completely different story. It's a blip, right?
Right.
Instead, it's something that changed the gravity of you and your wife's lives. I mean, now you guys are proud parents to two. You said they're all boys.
100%. Yeah.
I mean, so like my brother and I were 17 months apart growing up, so I can imagine that it's probably like a similar atmosphere where they just beat the tar out of each other.
They do, and I egg them on. We'll turn on WWE and
just give them the business,
and
man.
we'll do all that stuff. And I grew up with a dad who played sports and was rough with us, not abusive, but just rough.
Yeah,
you tackle
same way,
and
man.
Give them some choke slams on the couch and power bombs and all that. And I do all that stuff, and
that's awesome.
It's a blast.
That's
really
awesome,
is.
man. That's super cool, man. Like I said, advocacy for adoption, especially hearing at your angle and how you take it for the mom is super cool, man. And I think that's one of the reasons why we do this is because we want to get that information out there. Just to try to change gears away from the family aspect, the household. We kind of got that picture done.
Yeah.
I know that your job within the chamber, you're the executive director of the Huron County Chamber of Commerce, and with that, you're running a nonprofit, right? Am I right with that, or tell me if I'm
It's
I'm
not
wrong?
for profit.
A non-for-profit. Okay,
Yeah,
so it's not a complete nonprofit, but you're not making money.
Right.
So I'm curious, like, what kind of challenges are you seeing there, versus other businesses you've been a part of?
So it's a lot of. I'm still learning. Like, I'm new to the chamber world. It's been 7 months, whatever it is. So some of the challenges is figuring out what the functionality of a chamber is. Now, luckily, in my previous jobs, I have relationships with people in town, business owners in town. So my first part is really kind of figuring out how I can help these businesses, and from a chamber world. And luckily, my board's giving me a lot of freedom. Hey, this is yours to run. You figure it out. So it's a lot of just learning on the job is the biggest challenge. But ultimately, I kind of put myself in the shoes of a business owner. What do they need? And now each business is different. Like, your needs would be different than an insurance agent or a car dealership, right? So my job is to figure out all the resources that I can provide for these businesses, tailor make it, customize it for each business. So some business may just need marketing. So what are the tools and resources that I can provide for their marketing? Some businesses need help. Really, all businesses need help for labor. Right? How do I do that? There's all sorts of different things. Continuing education. They may need training. We're going to do an OSHA 10 class.
Yeah.
Some businesses need that. It's really just finding out business needs, and then my job is to figure out solutions.
What's your biggest challenge? With that? Like, is it lack of resources for you guys?
So there's some of that. So we chambers are all on. We're donations or fundraisers, and we're membership. That's how we operate. That's tough to do.
Yeah.
It really is. So that's probably the biggest challenge, in making sure we have enough resources to provide resources for chamber members. It all comes full circle. So that truly is a challenge. And then trying to get across businesses. Yes, you can join the chamber, and I'm going to do everything I can to help you. But if you're not receptive to the help, or if you don't participate, then you're not going to get out of it, what you probably could get out of it. So some of the challenges is getting 100% buy-in from people. To say, hey, chamber's great. I'm proud of what we have accomplished. You got to do your part too. So if I'm sending you information on this class or on whatever it is, like, you have to be receptive to that communication.
Yeah.
So that's a challenge, is getting people to be receptive.
So where does your heart come from? Because I feel the passion just in that, right? Like, that's clearly where your focus is today, for sure. And I know, once again, off camera, we talked a little bit about you're on the board of DD for Huron County.
Huron County Board of DD, yep.
Yeah, which is super cool, man. We did a trip when I went to school at Hillsdale, and we for our football senior deal, we went over and we spent the day. We had the fun day at the Ashland County Daleroy, which is their DD facility, and man, like, just, you can't not have a heart for those people, man.
Right.
Like, once you've been around, like, I heard somebody say one time, I feel bad for somebody with that's on the spectrum or whatever.
Right,
why are you feeling bad for those people, man? They're happy. They feel bad for you, man. Like, you're not happy, right? So, where does your heart come from within that? Like, where did that come from for you?
So that specifically, and it's twofold, and it goes back to family. So when my kids were born, they were called the Help Me Grow program. Okay. It's a service provided by most boards of DDs where in our case, it was more just kind of reassuring that they're developing correctly, with their at-risk birth, they were eligible for this. So, we had home visits and, they gave us instructions. Some of it was during the pandemic, which made things more difficult, but it is what it is. And they were really helpful and beneficial in giving my wife and myself even confidence that we're doing okay.
Yeah.
Just need reassurance. And they came to us one day and said, hey, we have a position on our board open. We thought, either you or your wife would be great for it. And I was always, for the most part, always wanting to get involved. So right away, I'm like, yeah, awesome. I'm on board. And then also, so in Huron County, the Board of DD and all that kind of started, it was called Christie Lane. It was an organization, kind of to help people like that. Well, my grandma was one of the people who started that. My Uncle Marty, who needed some of those services, and she was like the first bus driver of this group. So it was like a legacy thing as well. Like my grandma kind of was at the ground level of all this stuff, and it grew into this. Here's my chance to kind of like continue on that.
Yeah.
So it just felt like it just made sense.
Well, and so do you think that heart came from just, you did say the family piece, so I guess to wrap that up, your legacy of your grandparents, right, or your grandma?
Of my grandma, and then they did such a great thing for my family, gave my wife. I mean, we were doing a good job, but they gave us that, as new parents, the reassurance. They were great people, great cause, and they do a lot of different things outside of what I just talked about. And full transparency, like I have always had interest in politics and government. I don't know what that, with my board with my position right now, I can't really get involved.
Yeah, you can't do anything.
I don't want to. But also, long term, who knows? I might want to run for county commissioner someday or whatever it is. So I don't want to say selfishly, but another thing that goes to this is like, I'm just gaining experience and learning different systems of government and learning at the ground level. So if I ever do want to, who knows, I could change my mind, but if I ever do want to pursue politics, I have A, B, C, D, E, F, G on my resume saying I experienced this, I was part of this.
Well, and two, man, I don't ever think like, whenever we're doing something, there's a selfish background to it, whether we want to admit it or not. So kudos to you. Because like, we take our entire team to, for Christmas, everybody adopts a kid, and then we take them shopping, and we pay for it and all that good stuff. And like, we're doing it for the kids, but selfishly, there's a little bit of selfish component. We're also doing it because we want exposure. Right. We want to gain more business. Like, I'm never one to hide that. Like, there's always that piece in the back of our head, but that's not a true reason.
No, it's a happy thing that goes along with it. My motivation is never for me specifically, but if there is a good thing that comes with it that can help benefit me, like, as long as that's not my focus and that's my goal, that's just a happy accident, happy coincidence, then great, then cool.
We love a happy accident.
Either way, right? Yeah. And those kids are experiencing something that they wouldn't be able to experience if you weren't doing that. And if you didn't get a single business out of it, you're okay with that too, right? If you do get a job out of it, whatever, that's great too.
Well, it's funny that you say that, Command, because like my wife and I, we've been on the topic, like with our daughter coming, we're like, hey, do we send her to private school? Do we send her to a St. Ed's? Like, so we go to the chapel. We attend the chapel in Norwalk, and one of she has a horse facility in Berlin Heights, and they do riding lessons. Really, this is a conversation we had last night, and she was talking about how one of the kids couldn't take communion at St. Paul because she's not Catholic. Right. So then Pastor Eric, I think it was Pastor Eric, found out about this, and now he takes we take communion once a month, and he takes communion with the kids now. He goes intentionally and takes communion with the kids, so that way they don't feel left out. Well, the reason why I tell that little part of the story is because like I had the same viewpoint. Like if our kids end up going to Edison or wherever, and I don't like the situation, I'm going to run for the freaking school board. I'm going to change it. I'm not going to sit back and be like, you know what, man, that's cool. Like I'm going to go in and scream at their teachers. No, I'm going to create change. So you have the same. I think we have the same mindset there. Like I'd rather be part of the change than be part of the solution than be part of the problem. Right. So that's super cool, man. Like I relate to that.
Absolutely.
And I think a lot of people at home could, or maybe should, more. People aren't involved enough. They just rather sit and bitch and, world's going to hell. I'm going to just smoke my cigarettes. And the world's going. And I picture like that old dude in the bar, like, hey, world's going to hell.
Meanwhile, his kids won't talk to him, and he's got his whole world collapsing that aren't under his control. But I think it's easy to, especially now on social media, go there, and we're all geniuses on Facebook, Twitter, whatever it is you use, right? And we all think our opinion matters. Okay, everybody has a right to opinion, but if you're going to do something about it, your opinion carries weight. You know,
Yeah.
and you have to be proactive. Not everybody wants to be. Some people just, my wife, she's not the type of person to go out and do that stuff. She's just not. She's supportive, and she'll support me and support the causes and all that stuff. But not everybody's built to go out and do something.
Yeah.
And so for me, it started early on. I had a mentor that I worked with at the radio station who, it all started with him. He said, you should run for village council of Monroeville. You know what, that's a good idea. I'm kind of interested. And then from there, I think everything just took off as far as community involvement and as far as wanting to be a difference, wanting to put myself out there, because you have to put yourself out there, and truly be a part of the community and want to leave a legacy that my kids can be proud of.
Yeah, man, and that's the biggest thing. Like, that's my focus has shifted in the last probably 5 years. Is just like, I told people we could stop growing the business a long time ago, and I'd have been fine financially. But that's not why I'm doing it. Like, I'm doing it because I want my legacy to be. And Ed Milet says that when he gets to heaven, his vision. I don't where you at with your walk of faith. I'm always curious. Like,
that should be a whole nother episode.
But so you're not really practicing Christian or anything of that nature. Just curious.
No. So. All right. So I grew up Catholic, became non-practicing. I did go to the chapel for many months. Liked it certainly better than when I was at the
what you're
church.
used to with it.
There's nothing.
And nothing wrong with Catholics.
No.
Don't cancel me, Catholics. But
no. They like. I mean, there's a lot of good.
It's
from
different
that.
strokes for different folks.
Right. But faith is something not really part of my life. And I'm not opposed to it. I'm not opposed to people who make that a part of their life. Good for them. A lot of goods come from that. Most of my friends and family are good because of their faith. So, as of now, it's not for me.
No, that's completely understandable, man. Like, it's here's the thing I've always said. Like, I'd rather show you how to be a Christian than tell you how to be a Christian. Like, I will live my life how I live my life, and if you like how I live my life, I can explain to you how Jesus plays a part in that, right? So that's always been my thing, and I think we all go through our own walk. So that's I wanted to. I'm not like the Christian guy on here. Like, that's not what I get on here and do. But also, it's a big part of me, right?
100%. And I think that's kind of what we talked about. What the point of this podcast is: what are your motivations, the why, and all that stuff. And for you, that's part of your life, and there's nothing. That's a good thing.
Yeah. So I don't ever like to step on anyone's toes. I don't ever want to feel like I'm forcing it on anyone. I don't even remember where the hell I was going at, and honestly, it doesn't probably matter anymore. So it is what it is. I actually prefer what you said because it just gives good perspective. I always like the different perspective. Some people struggle with. So I was in Africa this past year. I did a mission trip over there, and we did a 15,000 person crusade, and just praying. It was funny because my wife found out she was pregnant while we were in Africa. Yeah. So she had to hold the secret for like 3 days while I was flying back. But it's funny because I think how the Lord works is. I was blessed with the little kids the first night. It's kind of what the theme of the podcast is, if you kind of thought about it, And the first night, man, I'm praying with the kids, and you have these kids come up to you and, hey, can you pray for my brother Thomas? They don't know what's wrong with him. Yeah. I'll never forget. I pray for Thomas all the time. And they didn't know what's wrong with him. You had a little girl come up with you, and we had 2 guys get malaria while we were there, and almost die.
Yeah, wow.
With U.S. medicine. The little girl come up to me, I have malaria, and she couldn't have been more than 5. And just that perspective on how your life changes in different aspects. Like, you probably look at moments in your life where you got prepared for things and you had no idea what the hell was going on, And it's crazy. It truly is. Like, you call it coincidence, call it fate, call it God, whatever you want to chalk it up to.
100%.
There's things that prepare us. So we were talking about that legacy piece a minute ago. That's where that was going as I started talking through that, man. And yeah, it's just like, it's great that we're doing all these things. It's great we can go out and make all this money. It's great that we can create all this impact, or you can get more chamber members than anyone's ever gotten, or whatever that metric is that you're going to measure against. But at the end of the day, man, like, we're all going to be put in the ground. Right. And, my legacy thing always comes back to when my dad's dad died, my grandfather. Almost every single one of his grandkids got up and spoke at his funeral, and then just numerous other people. So it was a moment where I'm like, that's what I want. That's my legacy. Yeah. That's like, but you have to have that defining moment, right? Because if not, then we're just doing this shit to do it. Right. I'm recording a podcast to record it. Right. You're heading up the chamber to head up the chamber. It's not because you're wanting to make an impact for your boys and let them see what's accomplishable. Because hell, man, you probably had a good life in radio, right? Yeah. But you wanted to step out of it because you knew there was more. Yeah. You knew there was more.
And that's the really crux of it, and I think is one of the reasons why the board hired me is because I told them, like, this is my home. Huron County is my home.
Yeah.
And not just my home where I live, the house, but like the community is my home. You know, you want to make your home the best you can make it. And that is my reason why I do what I do, and it's certainly not for the money, and that's okay. It's you know, I can go home at night knowing that I had an impact on someone's life, a positive impact. Whether they know I did or not, whether they knew Kevin Rasnick did this and now I have this or was able to do this, like just knowing that people, you know, based upon my actions, my decisions, and things that I say and do, even if it was for a moment, their lives been improved or their work's been improved, whatever it is, like that's you can sleep good that night.
Well, and Dr. John Maxwell calls that the elevator principle, man. Either we're bringing people up or we're bringing them down. You don't realize you're doing it.
Yeah.
It could be a smile at the freaking gas station, dude. But yeah, that's a great point. Like, who better to lead a chamber of commerce, which is truly there to make the businesses stronger and better in a county, than someone that wants to make the place a better place to live.
Yeah, and I think my perspective has helped. You know, I've worked retail, I've sold cars, I've done a lot before this to give me the perspective. You know, I've worked blue collar jobs. You know, I've all these things that, you know, I've seen the struggles that people go through that other people take for granted. You know, so having that context and having what people's experiences are really is very helpful, and it does motivate me and show me that, you know, you have to be creative in ways to find and treat people differently, not better, not worse, just differently, because everybody's life is different. Everybody's pains are different. So you have to have the perspective to recognize that.
100%, man. And that's what makes a leader a good leader at the end of the day, if you think about it, right? Like, Dr. Jerry, have you ever heard of the 5 love languages? I'm sure you have.
It sounds familiar,
It's a book based on, like, how we receive love. And if you think about it, like, even in the workplace or when you're out meeting with customers or potential clients or what do you call them? Members, yeah. Meeting with potential members or current members, they're all going to receive love differently. Some people like gifts. Some people like physical touch, a hug. You don't got to. Let's not get like.
I mean, if you want to hug, dude. I mean, I'm comfortable enough.
No, I'm cool with that. I'm cool with the bro hug, but I'm saying, like, let's not get weird in the workplace, right? But like some people are. That's how they receive love. Words of affirmation is a huge one. You know. I can never remember all the other ones. I'm looking at Jen behind camera like she's going to somehow remember. We're actually doing a walkthrough, but, you know, you take that with... I actually spent some time with Dr. Gary Chapman at a couples retreat, and we took that home. My wife and I did. We're like, okay. And like, the guys always are like, physical touch, yeah. No, it's not physical. That's not what we're talking about, dude. Like, so you got to be careful with that. But, you know, you take that home, and you're like, all right, I'm going to fix my life with this, and I'm going to figure out how this works, and then I'm going to take it to the workplace. I'm going to figure out how, you know, is this person a money person? Some people are money driven. And we're cool with that.
100%.
We're cool with that. Like, but that's a gifts person, right? That's someone that has to receive something. So that person, we're going to give a bonus. Then when we talk about the words of affirmation person, like that person just wants to hear they did a good job. And it's just crazy. You talk about the perspective thing. If you just take that little piece and go, well, people communicate different. Their love language is different. Their love receptor, what fills them up with dopamine is different. From person to person, and the same goes for how they receive all their other things. And unfortunately, there's other crap in our past that creates that, you know, good or bad.
Right, good or bad. Yep.
You know, because I had a Navy SEAL. Literally, I've done some weird stuff in my life, but we were at a retreat, and he's one of the guys that started the second Gulf War. He stepped on an oil tanker in Iran. Super cool guy, but he literally told me. He's a mind specialist now, and he talks about how the mind works and unlocking the caverns of your mind. And so, like, at that moment, I was thinking about being a dad. So I asked him, I said, well, you're telling me that everyone gets screwed up in their childhood, because in your developmental ages, and maybe this is a good piece of, this came up for me when you got 5-year-old boys, this is why I thought about this. And he goes, I said, so how do I make sure that I don't screw up my kids? He goes, you can screw up. You're gonna. The Navy SEAL told me this. You're gonna screw up your kids at some point. You don't know how you're gonna do it. It can be something minuscule, like you lock them in a closet for 2 minutes and you forget about them in some way, shape, or form. Like that's gonna screw them up. And that's the shape that gets us into our perspective. Sorry for getting off on a tangent completely there, man. I just felt like
it's your show, man.
And now this is never the Dylan show. You can ask my entire team. Cool. What is your biggest goal, since we're kind of doing this in the new year, what's your biggest goal for 2024?
Personally, professionally?
Whatever the big one is, man. There's a big one. There's one that you're like, dude, if I accomplish this, this will make my year. What is that one? It came to your head right when I asked it.
Yeah. I guess speaking broadly, is continuing to find ways to certainly be a better chamber director, but just continue to find ways to make improvements in my home. Now, when I use the word home, I mean Huron County. I mean everything. So all encompassing, and just truly, I think a lot of it is just continuing education. Learning the X's and O's of how to do this, but really just being there for my community and improving in that walk.
So I'm big on this, and I'm not beating you up, but I do these exercises a lot with people all over the country. Quantify that.
That's a good question. I guess because that's the right question to ask, and I'm trying to. I don't get stumbled easy.
So, and with that, man, like I'm not trying to give you perplexed and Jen will edit this crap out if it sucks. But, and it doesn't suck. This is a good conversation. And maybe that's not the right goal. And I'm always wanting to challenge you for that, right? Because it's just
and I appreciate that. I enjoy challenge. I enjoy people challenging me. I guess to quantify it is. I guess there's a physical number. Like, okay, so my goal is to have 300 chamber members. Okay, so I guess probably in terms of black and white, that's my goal for 2024.
And so by the end of the year for 2024, we're putting it out in the universe right now. We're having 300 it's not an if, it's a we're going to have 300 chamber members for 2024.
So when I told you my original goal was how to improve,
how does that tie in? That's good.
So my original whatever I'm doing, whatever I'm trying to improve at is to make sure that I achieve that goal of 300 chamber members. So that is learning how to be a better chamber director. That is learning how to better myself, because the end game from that, if I'm doing my job right and I'm learning what I'm learning and I'm improving where I'm improving, then that's where that 300 chamber members will come from.
No, that's super cool, man. I want to give you one more challenging piece with this, and this is, like I said, man, I just do this all the time. Just because I'm not familiar, okay, and we don't have to give specifics.
You're good.
But just because I'm not familiar, are you giving me a goal? Because like my team, I do this all the time with them. Are you giving me the goal that's within reach? Or are you giving me the goal that's a stretch? Like I got to reach and get on my tippy toes to get that thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
Is 300 members realistic? We want it to be realistic,
Sure.
but we want it to be challenging, right?
100%.
Because this is your BHAG, man. This is your big, hairy, audacious goal.
Right. So I think it is in that sweet spot where it's not over challenging, but it's challenging. I think it's right in that sweet spot. Where that number came from, and this is, before the pandemic, chambers were doing okay. Afterwards, they were losing members.
Yeah.
So I think 300, that's not where the chamber used to be. It used to be more than that.
Really?
So I think it's kind of that middle ground where it's better than where we are now. And
it shows improvement.
It shows improvement. It shows that I'm doing my job correctly, that people see enough value to be in the chamber. I think that's kind of where I'm at with it.
No, that's super cool, man. I just wanted to make sure because, like, I was leading a retreat one time, and we're going over goals, and was it last year? I read 78 books, I think. The year before that, I did 52 or 54, and I was running a retreat, and I was kind of telling them, it was in the middle of that 54-year goal, and I'm like, hey, so this is my goal. You lay out your goals, and you tell them what they are, and you give them the quantify, and when I'm going to do it, and all that good stuff, like what makes a good goal. And the kid told me 2 books. Well, you and I both know, this was in early March. I'm like, bro, that's just weak. I literally looked at him. I probably made the kid cry when he went back to the room, but I'm like, dude, that's not even a real goal. Like, you're giving me something that's too... So that's why I always want to make sure that it's challenging enough that it's going to stretch you, right? Because that's where growth happens. Yeah. If we're in our comfort zone and I'm where I've always played ball, then I'm going to put it in the terms of basketball, man. Like, if I'm wanting to be Michael Jordan, but I'm playing Little League, like, well, guess what? I'm going to stay in Little League. Yeah. I got to get up to the next level, whatever that is. Middle school, JV, varsity, all that good stuff. Like, I've got to stretch myself, you know?
And I think I'm a big believer, and I think there's a culture shift away from this, but I'm a big believer of paying your dues. And I think being challenged and then failing at those challenges or trying things you're uncomfortable without getting cut from your JV squad, right?
Yeah.
Or all those things, right? So, yeah, I'm a big believer of challenging. There might be some days where I'm going to take the easy road just because some days you need a like breather.
Yeah.
But to be challenged is how you improve yourself.
Yeah, 100%, man. And honestly, like, who cares if you freaking shoot for 300 and we get to 290?
Yeah, right.
That's pretty damn close.
Right.
Like, if it was a stretch goal and we still were pretty freaking close, like, once again, don't ever get into the money side of it here, but like, we're always setting a stretch goal. We call I heard a buddy call it a visionary goal. So like, if you set your goals in threes, this might be something that helps you. Like, what is the goal that makes us stay alive? What is the goal that's realistic that we can hit? What's that goal that we just feel like if we just kill it this year across the board, it's there? So then that way, when we follow through the whole process, I'll give him, it's Aaron Christie with Indy Roof Company. He's the first one I've ever heard use it. Adam Kamansky, I think, is who gave that to him. But anyways, regardless, like, if we give it that way, then it's that way. If you're in the middle of the year and you're like, shit, dude, we're only gonna on pace to have 200, and you're like, well, we at least have the 250 goal that's in sight, you know, and you're not completely off your rocker too. So you have to be careful with some of that stuff, you know?
And you have to. I mean, that's part of it. Setting realistic goals and mini goals along the way. That's, you know, people talk about that all the time, and I think at the end of the day, and I think we try to teach our kids this is like, you know, we tell them, hey, as long as you tried your best, and I think there's, you know, as long as you're truly trying your best, there's merit to that. There's merit. Like, I gave it my all, and I didn't get to that 300. I got to 289, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But all the controllables that I could control, I did.
Yeah. I did all my variables.
Yeah.
Right? No, I do. I teeter with the did you try your best type of thing because, like, the try is like do or do not, right? The whole Yoda thing.
Yoda thing, yep.
For years, dude, I had no idea what the hell that was. People kept saying, I'm like, what the
Do or not, yeah.
You know, do or do not. But then one day it clicked for me. So, like, did you do it? Did you at least do it? Did you at least try? Did you at least go after it with all your might? You know, but that's cool, man. Like, I'm excited because I know when we're gonna do another episode here next year for sure, and we're gonna hear about how you crushed 300 because you put it out in the manifestation. Manifestation's real. I don't care what anybody says, dude. Like, that's not woo woo. That's real.
Yeah, I mean,
you know,
golfers do it all the time.
Yeah,
they manifest the next shot.
Yeah, exactly, man. I'm gonna tell you where I'm gonna put it, and that's great. That's awesome, man. So you got the big goal for 2024. Now I want to know, this is the last question I'll ask you, and then I'll open the floor up to you. What's your, like, let's fast forward in 40 years from now, 50 years from now, 60 years from now. I don't know how old you are, so I don't want to date you.
I'm turning 40 this year. That's where I'm at with it.
60,
it's a big year for me, actually.
60, that's awesome, man.
Yeah.
I just turned 30 yesterday.
So happy birthday.
Thanks, man. So 50, 60 years from now, when Kevin's no longer here, what is the one thing that you want to be remembered for?
That he gave a shit, you know, and that's a blanket. Like, I cared about everything. And I want people to miss me when I'm gone. You know, those are the two big things that, you know, the idea of having a lot of people at my funeral, I want that. And I want people to speak, like, it's, you know, it's an ego thing. I'll be dead. I won't know. I won't hear it. Yeah. But it's an ego thing that people say, you know what, when he was here, when he's around, he accomplished this, this, and this, and he cared.
Yeah.
You know, and you want people to miss you. You don't want to be like, you die and, okay, it's sad for a minute, and they come to your funeral, and then they have their little luncheon, and that's it. Yeah. Right? You know, you want to have a legacy where it's like, people truly miss you, and there's a void. Not, you don't want people hurting. You don't want people in pain. You don't want that, but you want to leave a void being gone, right? And you're hoping, like in my case with my kids or grandkids, that, you know, I'm showing them they can step in and have their own life and fill that void themselves, and you know, carry that legacy on. Give
them the next man up mentality.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, you want to hear that well done type of thing. Like you said, you don't want to leave a void. Like, that's always, and that's where we get a fine line. Like, and my grandpa, he was 84 when he died. My siblings are gonna grill me if I got that wrong. He was well into his 80s, and he lived a good life. Like, he went on his own terms.
Yeah.
And I've never felt more at peace with a funeral in my life. Like, I genuinely, like, don't get me wrong, you still mourn. Like,
sad, awesome, yeah, 100%.
But there was a peace. He did it his way.
Yeah.
He went out before the holidays. It was November 8th. I'll probably get grilled if that's wrong, too. It was right before the holidays, and he didn't want us to see him sick at the holidays, man. And it was just a peace, but there was no void. There's still a void. Like, you still want him there. So you struggle with that too, but like, also, like, there's a legacy there component I tell people all the time, he died one of the. I don't want to say that he was poor, but by a lot of metrics, he was.
Yeah.
Right. Financially, he was poor, but he was the richest man I ever knew.
Yeah.
And that's the difference, right? And that's where, no, man, and I can tell you give a shit. I just want to make sure that you hear that.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that.
know?
Everybody, I mean, as much as we don't, and guys have egos, well, I don't need that, but we all need attaboys every now and then, right? We do. We need affirmation.
Yeah, and it's to just show that we're doing the right work, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, like, what is all this for, man? Like, yeah, I got this big ass office, and we're pouring a bunch of money into it, and I've got great staff and all that good stuff. But like you said, if I don't give a shit, if people don't know that I give a shit, then what's it matter?
Yeah. Yeah, because then people are thinking he did it for him, and you never want to make it about. We all have our selfish reasons why we do stuff. We just talked about that, but you don't want people to think everything that this person did was to benefit them.
Yeah,
that's the last thing I want.
That's awesome, man. No, and I think you're gonna, like I said, man. I know that you're gonna accomplish that. I know I can sense that you've got a true passion for those boys, and they're gonna live on with Kevin's legacy. And I'm excited to see what the next few years holds for you, man. I really am. The last couple minutes here, the floor is yours. Anything you want to share at all, just have at it.
So I guess, one of the biggest things that I'm kind of learning along the way is that it's okay to rely on other people, and it's okay to ask for help, and it's okay to understand and you don't know what you don't know, and it's okay to be vulnerable, and it's okay to not be the smartest guy in the room. Like, surround yourselves with people that can bring you up and can help you remind you of what the why is, or remind you what your motivations are. You're not in this alone. People want to fight with you, and I think I'm talking more in terms of like guys. It's sometimes we feel like we got to do things ourselves, and we can't have these conversations and, head down, mouth shut, do your job. And that's not the way your life should be. It should be include other people that help lift you up and lift others up.
No, that's perfect, man. That's a great way to end it. And I want to thank you for coming
on,
on,
this
brother.
is awesome.
It's been a pleasure. Like I said, I look forward to having more conversations as I'm continuing to be a part of the BNI and we get into our membership with the chapter. I just want to thank everybody for tuning in, watching it all the way to the end. If you do us a favor, this is there's no heavy sponsors here. This is literally funded by All American Roof Pros. But regardless, if you all wouldn't mind sharing this show, I think this episode, somebody needs to hear the message you just heard. So as Andy Frisella says, don't be a hoe, share the show, and we'll see you on the next episode of The Why.